One of the things that I find often is been missing from TLI sessions is new people especially don't understand how Toastmasters has been put together. So I just want to briefly show this graphic here. The idea is they call it the inverted pyramid. The whole organization exists to support the members that are at the top, so to speak, of the entire infrastructure we have in place. So member is this organization all about. However, a person cannot be a Toastmaster without being a member of a club. So there's an inherent link between the members and the clubs. Clubs are then grouped into areas. I will talk a little later about your area director. Areas are grouped within divisions. We have 8 divisions in District 61. These eight divisions comprise what is called District 61, and for people who are aware, District 61 covers the entire province of Quebec, the southeastern part of Ontario from Deep River down to Kingston, and the northern part of New York State. We have clubs in New York State, 1 in Waterloo, 1 in Mesquite, in Akwesasne. The districts all are part of regions. A couple of years ago, we're moved from a region we have been part of for many years. We are now part of Region 9, which is simplicity and maritime region. And then all regions, 14 across the world, are grouped together under headquarters. And there are 2 parts to headquarters. One is there are paid staff, are the only people in the organization that are paid, and they do the support structure, if you will, of Toastmasters. They also have what we call international officers. I happen to be a past international officer. There are several different types. The ones that a lot of people are familiar with are national directors. There are also region advisors. Every region is assigned an advisor, and every region has an international director. I was a region advisor for Region 6, which was what we were in before 2011. Just for context, those of you that don't know me, I am also a past district governor. I've held every club office there is, and most district positions as well. I've been a Toastmaster since 2001, so about 18 years. So within the club, and that is why you are here today, there is an executive. I am speaking in this segment, presidents and VP education, and as you should be aware, there are 5 other members of your team: membership, public relations, secretary, treasurer, and sergeant at arms. They also are having sessions in different today. Most of what I'm going to share with you can be found in the club leadership handbook that you received, an electronic link you should have received. If not, you need to talk to the past president of the club last year. Once they received the officer list, emails to all newly elected officers, and instead of being a hard copy book now, it is an electronic PDF. You can download it, and it is the soup to nuts of clubship. It's a very well written book. A little bit of explanation about how to put together. The table of contents is self-explanatory. But in that book, for your reference, presidents, there is a section in there that is of most interest on page 22, and for VP Eds, it's on page 25. It is wise for you, though, to read the entire book. The entire book is structured in such a way that as they talk about different things, it shows the officers is interested in this particular facet. So you see the colored numbers there on the screen at the moment. It also, any given passage, and I just grabbed a hold of a piece here, the Club Executive Committee, you'll notice it has all 7, obviously, but there will be different in the books that will talk about this particular seg, say, for example, finance relates to the president and the treasurer. So it's a very nice and visual way for the explanation on what this particular Ask Club leadership is and who it relates to. I'd like to just quickly review its line. It's outlined in that handbook on page 18. There are a number of dates. There's sort of a folder laid out there, but they're very specific, and the key you always want to remember: membership renewals must be done by September 30 and by March 31st. These are now hard dates. It used to be there was a certain grace period whenever it's done by mail. Now that everything is done online, these are hard dates. If someone has not had a renewal sent in by October 1st, they become a member not in good standing. Where that can have an impact is in speech contests. Because the moment someone is no longer in good standing, or they're a member of a club that is no longer in good standing, then they cannot compete. So if a club has not sent its renewals in by October 1st, then that club is no longer in standing. To send renewals, you must send in a minimum of 8 renewal members. And the other thing that a lot of people are not aware of is that list must include 3 people that were on roster in the previous period. You cannot do a renewal with an entirely new list of members. So if you, for example, have 20 members and all 20 members for whatever reason left, and there are now 20 members, you have to have 3 prior members in your list in order to be able to file a renewal. Toastmasters will not accept it if it is a completely new list. There's another date to remember. Remember, we have the specific date yet as we know the district calendar should be going out soon, is the midterm TLI, what I was often referred to as the winter TLI. That one will be happening in December. Your May 1st meeting, no choice. It is the first meeting of May. It's the meeting in which you must hold your elections. You do not have an option to hold the meetings later. It's in the club constitution. It is a requirement. The elections are held on the first meeting that your club holds in May. And then the other are the 3 membership building programs that happen throughout the year. One of them will start in August for 2 months, and you'll notice that the significance of these, it coincides with the renewal period. Second one, Talk Up Toasters, also coincides the renewal period in March, so the two meeting up. And then the final one, Beat the Clock, is 2 months leading towards the end of the Toastmaster year. Hopefully we're on track here. Briefly, I want to go through the Distinguished Club program. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It is written up, it is described, but still sometimes confuses people. In a broad, the DCP covers aspects of club administration. There's an educational part, there's a membership part, and there's administration. The educational part, while Pathways and the Legacy program exist, is the part that tends to use people. On the screen, on the left side, you see the 6 goals of the old quote-unquote DCP or the old Legacy program. On the right side, you see the new requirements for the Pathways program. These 2 are the requirements for Legacy and for Pathway. While the 2 programs exist, clubs are allowed to cross-mill these educational goals. So for you to get a distinguished goal in the educational part of a DCP, you have to acquire any 6 of the 12 items that you see on the screen. They can be all 6 could be Legacy, all 6 could be Pathways, they could be 3 and 3, it doesn't matter. It's just any of those 6 bullets will achieve one of the goals of the DC. The member remains unchanged, as does the administration. For membership, you need 4 new members as one goal, and 4 more as another goal. For your training, you need to have at least 4 of your 7 officers trained twice in the year. And there's all a requirement that your officer is filed on time after election, and that at least one of the 2 renewals is filed on time. So every time you need one of those goals, there are 10 goals altogether, Distinguished Club program. An important note is that this is the last year that the Legacy program will exist. So after June next year, the 6 goals listed on the left here will no longer exist. One interesting little quirk about this, you notice that as of the Pathways, as of July 1st next year, there will be no educational or DC award, if you will, for a member receiving a DTM. It is strictly a level achievement in Pathways. Just a reminder, it is the last year for the Legacy program. One other important note is club finance. It's covered at page 54 in the handbook. Most of significance to the and to the VP Ed, to the treasurer. You must, of course, bank account if you are gathering and collecting funds and paying membership, et cetera, to TI. And you must, of course, manage those funds and make sure they do an audit of the funds and report back to the membership on how things went. The audit can be a non-executive member of the club who's willing to do it. Some clubs like to find an external, another club member from another club to do the audit, whichever way. It must not be the executive members that does that. The thing that I like to remind people about this is the reason for it's important about finances. You have however many members you have in your club that give you a certain number of dollars every year to administer and to deliver the program. They give you that money as an executive. They trust you with that money. It is the problem and the responsibility of the executive to make sure that the program works well within your club. So straight from the, I'm not going to read this thing. On page 46 defines what is a quality club. This is really a good description for executives to look at when you're having your executive meeting. You hopefully are planning to have them at least once a month.
Frank?
Yes.
This is Travis talking.
Hi, Travis.
The DTM, so they're getting rid of the DTM altogether?
No, they're not getting rid of the DTM, but the DTM will no longer count for anything towards the DCP program of the club.
Oh, okay, but you can still earn your DTM
absolutely
designation.
Yes.
Okay, and that is if you complete one level 5, you get your DTM.
2. You have to complete 2 pathways, and then there are a couple of other projects that you do to complete your DTM.
Okay.
The thing that's worth mentioning there is there have been sometimes people have been concerned that as of next June, what happens to everything that they have earned under the legacy program? Let's say somebody, for example, earned an ACS, so they have a silver communicator, but they like to get the gold finished. Does it disappear here? You will never lose credit for anything that you have finished or done in the legacy program, but you will no longer be able to apply for any legacy awards after June 30th of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, so some people have been concerned about that. They've said, well, I was a member of the executive for a year back in 2015. What happens to that? Will always be on your record. And when under TM, the new Pathways program, you now are required to serve 12 months as a club executive member. If you have done 12 months service, like I started in 2001, and I've been on executive of 1 or more clubs every year I've been in.
Right.
I don't know how many credits accumulated. So I can count on any of those if I go to file a DTM when I'm doing my pathways.
Right. Okay. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
So this definition of a quality club, I think, good for people to remember because it goes beyond just, is it DC? A lot of people get hung up on DCP, and I'll come back a little bit later when I talk about some of the things that I see happening in clubs at the moment. But for example, you can see here, encourage and celebrate member achievement. In other words, recognition. Provide a supportive and fun environment. That's in the club mission statement. Professionally organized meetings with variety. A lot of people tend to run the same agenda week after week after week. I had something new in one of the clubs this past year. It was the lottery meeting. And the members raved about it after it happened. Basically what it was, I was VP Ed, and I told everybody, you all must come to the meeting with a speech, because everyone is to draw a roll out of when they walk in the door. So you have no idea what your role is going to be before you get there. We're going to fill up the roster when when people get into the room, and then we'll put the agenda based on who has drawn a role. And I did allow trading. So people wanted to swap around. It was entirely up to them how they did it. If they could convince somebody to their role, but the idea was any person walking in might be the speaker. So they all had to have one ready. And people absolutely loved it. It's something they had never experienced before, and they went back to their clubs and tried it. So it's an example of a variety. Some of you heard about the upside down meeting. You turn the agenda on its head. So evaluations happen before speakers and things like that. Little things that can change up the agenda, that make it interesting for people. This is just something different. So. That's basically the one paragraph description from the hand to what distinguishes a quality club. Now, what are some of the things you look for? This doesn't come direct from the book, but this is, I have been an area director 5 times, and these are the things that I look for when I go to visit a club. One, is everyone in the club regularly take all the role of the meeting? I have been to a lot of clubs where people will only speak, or they will only do table topics, or they'll only be the timer. And that gets tiring very quickly. Everyone in the club needs to take all of the roles in time. They're developmental, but also as a participation. So people need to know, and that way, of course, everybody needs to be doing some speeches. Because one of the roles that I have right now is called district statistician, and I have been looking at what is happening in our clubs that we're having so much trouble these last 10 years or so. One of the things that I discovered was there are an awful lot of clubs out there that are depending on only a few members to complete award DCP. In other words, only a handful of members are doing speeches. Where this came up, we took a look at Sue asked me last year, let's have a look at the clubs that have been distinguished for the last 5 years. What is it that they're doing allows them to be distinguished? Interestingly enough, when I looked at one of the clubs, they were getting their educational goals every year, but when I looked at who was doing the goals, it was 2 members of the club were achieving all educational goals for each of those years. So in other words, the other 24 members in the club weren't doing enough speeches to achieve goals or awards. And that's not a good thing. You cannot have, I call it key person syndrome. You cannot have a where everybody is dependent on a small number of people to pass all of the yardstick success markers that are established in Toastmasters. And that's where I warn people about the DCP. It's a good program as long as you don't use it as your compass. It's meant to be a program that does a checkpoint of certain things, and if you have X number of goals, then you're doing good, or you're doing okay, or you're doing fantastic. But look under the covers. Are there speakers? Any of the VPN, if you have been VPN before, you know that you will get late cancellations for any reasons, and especially in core clubs. People suddenly, you have the fire of the, I call it, or comes down and says, never in your Toastmaster meeting, I need you this. Quite the fact that they've approved your Toastmaster membership. So you are left without a speaker on the agenda. Try as hard as possible to have a list that I called eager speakers. These are people who have a speech ready to go at the drop of a hat, and they're able to be called on. I was VP membership for 4 years of the advanced clubs a while, and I got to where by January, even for speakers on the agenda, I had no speaking slots left at the end of June, which sounds very, very envious for a lot of people, except when you get a new member, you can't fit them into the agenda. Then you come up to a meeting, and then before somebody is sick, they've got a sore throat or whatever, they say, I'm sorry, but I've got to back out, I can't make it. Or they didn't, just whatever the case may be. Having an eager speaker available means you can call or send an email and say, hi, just having come up, you're on. I got the list of 10 names of people with eager speakers, and that list was full. So no matter when, I could call somebody and say, I've got a slot that just opened up on, and have their speech at the next meeting. So again, that's another good indicator that everybody in the club is ready to step in and they're ready to go. They've all got what a lot of people call that hip pocket speech. Projects that are done and the evaluations are on focus. What do I mean by that? I have visited clubs where people are doing a speech, and basically it was somebody who was going to run for political office and wanted to practice their political speech. Had nothing to do with the educational programs masters. In our Toastmaster promise, there is a promise in there that says all my projects will be based on Toastmaster projects. Once or twice, if somebody has a presentation to do, yes, there's nothing wrong with the club saying, what, we're going to make time for someone to do this special project, and we're going to give them feedback on it. But it should never become the habit. Your projects need to be on target, whatever the project is the person's working on. And similarly, evaluations. If you have been in meetings, does this ring a bell? Hi, appreciate, very much enjoyed listening to your speech. We listened to you talk, and we talked about that, and it was very engaging, and really enjoyed the topic, and I found myself being absorbed in your such a discussion. I thought you really were everybody well, and my goodness, I sure hope I'm there to hear your next speech. All that the readers does die evaluation. I'm just going to tell you what you just told us, but we haven't talked about anything from the project goals, specifics about use of voice or gestures. A lot of those things are happening, and I think because people sometimes are afraid to do evaluations thinking that it's criticism. It is a skill, and it is an important skill, and it is important for anyone who is in career path, especially if you are in management. You must know how to give people feedback, and sometimes you have to give bad news, and you need to be able to know how to do that. One of the ways that we practice this is in Toastmasters, doing evaluations. Call it bad news, call it what you want, but you are learning how to give people constructive ideas that will help them improve. And people will need to practice that skill. Do not lick it off the grass, mostly. Members will not go up their club meeting for almost anything else. Now, this is a very common problem in corporate clubs. I'm now retired. I'm not in a corporate club anymore, but I started 7 different corporate clubs in Canada Revenue. I also, just for context, I together with other Toastmaster was the one that got Revenue to take the position where they pay the membership for the Toastmasters. And to put this in context, Canada Revenue has approximately 40 Toastmaster club across Canada. I can come back to that a little bit more later. The issue, however, is either because there's something else going on, or somebody needs to finish that email, or they're working on a report that just becomes more important. What they're really telling you when something else can take the place of a club meeting is, I'm not getting enough from my club meeting for me to give up this. This is more important at the moment. If your club can get to a point where your members turn around and say, I'm not missing my club meeting anything, and if this meeting that I'm in this morning goes longer, goes over the lunch hour, I'm leaving and I'm going to my Toastmaster meeting. So there are clubs like that. One of my advanced clubs, I'm in 2 different advanced clubs. One of my advanced clubs meets on Saturday morning. Now, a lot of people say, my goodness, I can't give up my Saturday morning. But if you come to that meeting, you'd be in a room about 20 people who absolutely do not want to be anywhere else on a Saturday morning. That's how much we get out of our club. It's our way of focus on evaluations and everything, but there is such a feeling of worth in the meetings that we have that our members come out no matter what. And we have an exceptionally high retention rate when we go for renewals. Why? Because the program is doing what it's supposed to do, and members like it. There is also another element in this, and that is our members are engaged beyond just the time of the meeting. There are a group of us that actually meet pre-toasties before the meeting. We just meet in a coffee, have a coffee chat. How are you? And then over the club goes for post-toast. And we go to, there's a pub nearby, and they have a weekend brunch, and we all go there and we engage in social discussions afterwards. Many elements to what members have to work, whatever you call it, more than just what's on the agenda. This is a challenge for corporate clubs, because corporate clubs usually meet at the lunch hour. And it's usually by the clock. At 12 o'clock, the gavel down, everybody does their thing, agenda to see if it's familiar, has the item to the minute, and ending at 1300 or 1 p.m., and then everyone is out of the room and they're back to work. It is very difficult to try and engage members beyond, and they associate the meeting as simply this is my meeting time, we get to practice this and that and everything else, but it's in the middle of a day, lots of other things. And the other thing I have found with clubs, a lot of people tend to think that I can only prepare speeches at work because of the work thing. And as a result, they have a hard time getting people to get on the agenda for speeches. The truth, every member needs to think about preparing speeches, and it's not confined to the office. We're usually too busy at work. Email is an evil product that consumes people's time. I was management when I retired, and I estimate 70% of my day was handling email. I handled over 100 emails a day in a very technical support type environment. It's like a cancer that just will away. The problem is it leaves people no time for anything else, and it derails any kind of sense of time for devotion or sitting down to actually get a concentration and a line of thought going. Because then that little ding, there's an email, and people, oh God, I've got to answer right now. We even now have a course, of course, with Twitter and social media. Everything has moved to the front as being the most important thing today, even to the point where people are doing when they're driving. We all know it. Hard in corporate clubs to get members to think beyond just that 1 hour a week where the clubs are meeting. And yet you need to try and find a way. Sometimes one of the things that we used to do was we would just go for a beer after work. Pick a day, maybe once, twice a year. Hey, anybody who's interested, or go over to such and such just for half an hour, have a beer. I had one meeting where instead of having the meeting at work, I said, because we were in the West End, I said we're going to go to Andrew Hayden Park. We're going to be in Andrew Hayden Park. Take a few extra minutes to get there. And we're going to adapt the agenda, and everybody brings some Kool-Aid or whatever, and we still had half of our members that made the time to come out. Unfortunately, the weather. So clubs that engage their members are the ones that come strong. The other, and I've said already a couple of times, and I can't stress this one enough, is engagement needs to be personal. We are suffering on many fronts, but Toastmaster Club especially, from the preponderance of the use of electronic means. I did a speech, semi-humorous, whatever you want to call it, on what I called the anti-social network, products like book, etc., which what they do is they actually avoid or create an environment that prevents people from getting together. Everybody does it online, and it's a one-way communication. It's a one-way communication. If you've ever heard an explanation of how much of a message comes from the actual words used in the message, it's only 7%. 93% of a message comes from the nonverbals. Context, smile, eyes, gestures, voice, whatever. So when you send an email, you are only sending 7% of your message. It's very ineffective. Email has can be used to blast the agenda to everybody the night before a meeting, so that you hit all 20 or so members with a copy of the agenda. There's nothing wrong with that. Email should never be used in a volunteer organization if you are going to ask somebody to do something. You take the time to talk to that person either on the phone or face to face. I made a point when I was membership in VP Ed and in my corporate club. If I ask somebody to take something on, some kind of a little project, I'd say, let's go for coffee, and I would to them over coffee. A lot harder to say no person on the phone or when you're face to face. B, it is simply much more personal. You are asking someone to invest something of their time that is on behalf of or you yourself. Doing it electronically. The thing I like to tell people is email doesn't work for me. The cleanest key on the keyboard is the delete key. And if someone has not engaged me, the first paragraph of an email, why do I need to know about this email? The email is gone. We use it too much, and it is a very impersonal tool. And it is used so much at work that when an email is in from the club, it's simply because other piece of clutter in the inbox. And I challenge you to ask yourself, how many pages do you have in your list, in your inbox? Notwithstanding, I'm not going to go into courses and stuff. I took a very interesting course, and I learned one of the things I had to do, manage my inbox, all of the 4Ds. When I left work, until to this day, my inbox is no more than half a screen. And that's on purpose, because it allows me to make sure that I don't spend my whole day live in my inbox. Get it and deal with it and move on and do what needs to be done. The same happens with clubs, whether it's corporate or community. If you don't have that personal contact, you're going to have a big problem trying to engage your members. Enough about that. Why is your leadership in the club important? I'm going to talk a little bit on some statistical perspectives here, things I looked at last year at the request of the trio. I've looked at numbers for many years for the trio in the district, but I look at not just from how many things people achieved, etc. I look at it from a perspective: is there's something going on that maybe we haven't been tapped into that we need to take a look at. Our clubs are struggling. The October renewal is the worst time of year for the district. You will see in a minute. I'm going to show you some numbers. A huge loss in the numbers that we have. And by the end of the year, a lot of clubs have never come back to where they were. So again, I'll back to that. As leaders and presidents, particularly for you here, have vision is very important. There is a Toastmaster mission, but each year the executive and president in particular has an opportunity to share a vision and share it with the members. Presidents, share your vision with your team, and team with the members. Members like to know what their leaders have in mind for the year. They don't want to know that the executive is just kind of fun through the year. They're not being informed. Is our meeting, is our leadership meeting? Count on them to create the environment that is healthy. And if you don't let them know what's happening, then the members become concerned. If you share a vision for them, for example, in one of the clubs, I have a vision. I want to strengthen membership to a specific point, and I will have a stronger connection to our members. I said that to my executive team. I want us to be more in touch with our members, talking with them a bit more, not just little surveys, etc., but just when we talk and see, have a personal interest. Example I'll show you, it was in one of our corporate clubs actually. We had a member who had to go for heart surgery. So he was going to be away for 3 months or more. I was VP membership that year. I said to the member can you give me your email or your phone number? So they did. And about a week after their surgery, I sent an email and said, just calling or, just touching base. How did it go? Are you feeling all right? Are things looking good? And I got a response back, and I shared that back with the nurse. And we did that a couple more times. And when the member came back, what I discovered was the personal contact had decided they were going to stay with us. They were actually thinking about leaving because they didn't really feel anything. But personal contact beyond just what it says in your handbook was enough for them to feel, no, this is part of something I belong to. And that's part of what it's about. Have something makes a connection with your members. And then they feel engaged, and they then want the executive, and they take cues from the executive. So the whole executive team is part of that. And that then becomes, because don't forget, every one of you in the executive is also a member in your club. So what is it that I'm referring to? Looking at some memberships, and this is at a district level, so it's not on a club base. Last July, the district had 3,713 members at the beginning of the Toastmaster year. After October renewal, we lost 1,267 members. We to 24,146. Now, all of the clubs in the district by this time had found 170 new members. After the April renewal, the drop was not as bad. It was 487 lost. So we had sort of worked our way back up to 3,528 and slid back to 3,000. New members across all the clubs by this time, 1,289. So at the end of the year, we currently have 3,528 members in the district. So as you can tell, we still did not get back to the level that we were at. New members, we found 1,868 members. To put that in context, that is an average of 9.6 new members every year. For every club in the district. Now, some find more, some find less. It is an average of 9.6. That means, folks, is on an average basis, every club in this district earned an 8 of the DCP program, which are the new member goals. And yet, we ended up with less members overall than what we had at the beginning. So the question is, how come? We're getting new members. A lot of clubs will say it. We can't find members. We can't find new members, especially in corporate areas. And I'll talk about it in a second. The fact, on an overall basis, we are finding new members, but we are not hanging on to them. So what is the process that we're talking about? I want to sort of put this in context of something that Toastmasters calls from prospect to guest member. Prospect is that person out who doesn't know about Toastmasters, or it's in a workplace or whether it's in the community. There are people out there who don't know about Toastmasters. They don't know what the program is. They don't know what it can offer. From a core perspective, they have no idea what it could do for their career. Our job is to try and get the word out to them, to bring them to the door of our meeting room. Now, primarily, this falls on the responsibility of the VP of Public Relations, but remember, it's always a team effort, and also, of course, involves the members. Here's something to think about. There are so many mechanisms. Today, I'm an old guy. When I grew up, we had newspapers. Newspapers came to our every day. If you wanted to put some word out there, clubs, for example, would put an ad in the newspaper program in their newspaper. Pay for an ad every week, and that's where people looked for social things, etc. Nowadays, of course, everything is online. Facebook, Snapchat, whatever, any number of sources, Twitter, it doesn't matter. They're there. That's one of the tools that is out there. Obviously, reaching out to people is putting out publicity full, especially for community clubs. Going to the grocery store, put tabs on notepads and everything else. At the workplace, it very much depends on the culture of the workplace as to what kind of options you have available. Putting an advertising poster by the elevator is a wonderful tool if you're allowed to do it. A lot of buildings won't allow it. Having a newsletter, a corporate newsletter. I knew when I was working with somebody at Health Canada, they had a newsletter for the learning committee, and she put this newsletter every month. It was supported by the management. Every employee in the organization got this newsletter, and it was an update about what was going on in training and everything else. She even had a little mascot that was all part of it, and this person in the email. But it was an amazingly effective tool. She was recognized at the government level for her achievements. The fact is there a vehicle around? When I worked in the IT branch of the revenue. We did have a newsletter that went every week. So you could put something into that newsletter. If you were going to have, for example, an open house, we had a chance to put a blurb in there, and it would bring people to the door for that. So there are ways of doing it, but you sometimes have to be a bit more creative and traditional. You of course, don't have Facebook and things like that. Now, there is GC Media, etc., but it's mixed evaluation as to whether people are using it. But you've got to find people. The interesting thing is all those tools are not effective as one other tool. And if this were a live session, I would be asking people to raise their hand if they knew what it was. The most effective tool. Some of you, I think, have voice or unmute. Let's see if it's enough. What's the best tool we got out there to try and find people or draw people to our club?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. It is. The French have a saying, and I absolutely love it. It's called bouche à l'oreille. Mouth to ear. It is wonderful. It really does work. And I'm going to read everything here. Just to keep it clean. So it really does work well. And sorry, I'm just going to. There we are. If your members are excited at their membership, they will to other people. And it is the most effective recruiting tool that you have. But you need to have that interest in your members. Your members need to think about, and this is where if they associate your Toastmaster meeting at a lunch thing that happens once a week, and they go back to work and the fire of the day consumes them, then they're not going to talk, they're going to forget, and they're not going to think about Toastmasters again until the next meeting day. That's not effective engagement. Every member should have a Toastmaster pin that they can wear around work. One of the things we did was we used to have a little trophy for the best table topic speaker of the day, or the most energetic member day. And that person got to take, and it was a little nonsense trophy. It didn't matter what it was, but they got to take it back to the desk. And when people stop by, they take a look at that and then sort of, oh, hey, what's that about? Things like that, or pull up on your wall or whatever that that will generate communication. Think about those kinds of tools so that people generate some discussion. Your members are most effective for recruiting too, and it doesn't matter whether it's a community-based club or corporate. Corporate club is a great advantage here in that you have a captive audience. Very typically, it is within an office building. So whether it's at the cafeteria, in the elevators, in the lobby, as you're in, you see people over and over again. They have a closed community. If you have a community club, let's say Barhaven example, you may or may not run against past a certain person, once a month, grocery store, something. You have a captive audience in the workplace. All you need to get them to do is think about, how can I make time for my Toastmaster meeting, and sell them on how this can help their career. Table topics is a natural. Everyone can go through a job interview. Everyone has to leave a voicemail at some time or another. Those are tabletops. That's impromptu speech. And people will relate to that instantly. And if they know that going to this club is going to help them in those areas, or us is going to know that if they learn to do better evaluations or how to give people some constructive feedback, and in many cases, the company will pay for it. That varies, of course, from company to company, but they will pay for it. It's just they're letting people know. Once you get people to the door, it becomes very important with how you treat them. It is super important that when a guest comes to the door, they are greeted warmly. Now, you either have a at the door, or at the very least, the VP membership should be looking for guests. The first thing they want to do after greeting and introducing themselves is bring that person and have them sit next to an experienced member. And ideally, if they can, try and get a sense of whether or not person has a personality match. And what I mean by that, if you have an extrovert, you have an introvert next to the door who is almost afraid of their shadow, it's probably a great idea to put them the person who is just sort of like, hey there, how are you? And now wants to hug them, because they're going to run out of that room faster than they came in. But it's important that they sit next to somebody so that during the meeting, if something happens, they can what was that about? Applause. People all of a sudden, my goodness, is everybody shaking their hand? It's important for a guest to have somebody that they can turn to at the time that they have some question, just quietly. The sergeant at arms is the one who is responsible for setting the room up, create ambiance, as they call it. Some sergeant at arms are the ones who are appointed to greet people at the door. Your treasurer also needs to be involved, because when the guest is ready to become a member, it's the treasurer that will say, yes, at this point of the year, our prorated is your membership from now to the end of whatever, let's say the end of September, it's going to be this much. So all three of those club officers need to be involved. Your members have to be involved, because it should be everybody in the room that is making a guest feel welcome. Your VPA is involved as well too, because you have to make sure as the Toastmaster that the guests get a chance to say something at the end of the meeting, but never ever force them. I can't understand times I've been in a meeting where people actually force a guest to say, no, we want you to say something about our meeting. And then the guest is just like, I don't want to say a word. Or even worse, they force them to take a table topic. Say anything. No, this person is that's never going to come back. So treating that guest and getting to understand what we offer and being ready to sign up is that stage. Once they have become a member, encourage that member and make sure that they're happy. Primarily, this is the role of the VP of Education and VP of Membership. It is your job to make sure that that member feels that they got what they came for. Remember, they have given you a check, and you are going to want them to give you another check in another year. If they don't like what they're experiencing, or they are not getting the satisfaction that they were hoping to get, they're not going to come back. And if we remember that the most important and valuable tool we have for reading is a member, the executive, not social media, not newspapers, well, we need happy members who are happy about the club and who want to share what they're getting out of the club to be able to find new members. And that's what closes the loop. So it is so important, and then it really comes back to member satisfaction. I'm feeling a lot of clubs, for whatever reason, are getting very hung up on the club program, filling the agenda. It happens a day or before, and then all the other fires of the day and all the other things that go on in life take over the rest of the time, and no one is actually taking the time to work with the members. And if members aren't satisfied or don't feel happy, don't feel welcome, they're gone at the first opportunity. Either when you ask to renew, or some simply walk away. And when they walk away, if somebody doesn't call them and say, "Hey, we haven't seen you in a meeting lately. Is there anything that is missing, or something we can do?" That member said, like, "Well, what did they want? They just want my money," and then they'll come back. So all of the things that happen in Toastmasters, we have a rich education. There is no two ways about it. But if we don't make it work for the people that are paying us to make this work, it'll be a challenge. Other tools that you want to think about, and I'm just going to very quickly touch on. Toasters has a number of little education series. VPs. You should try to schedule one of these in, especially if you have a gap where you don't have a speech. Think about, and each executive member should be wanting to do some of these, because in order for you to get your advanced leader bronze on the legacy program, you deliver 2 of these modules. But at the very minimum, I highly recommend that every year you at least do the moments of truth and the evaluate to motivate. Truth, if you have not seen in this module, is module basically pose a series of questions. It's not actually the kind of questions you're going to be asked by your area director, but the club should do this internally, and the executive should want to do this, because they will pose a series of questions in 6 broad areas of the club. Anything from impressions, how do you treat your members? Is your programming well? Are you doing good recognition? And things like that. They ask questions. You want to get the members to answer those questions, and aren't positive. This is your to-do list as executive. Your members are telling you things that they would like to see different in the club, and that is the responsibility of the executive to say, "Let's see what we can do about this." The evaluate to me is the tutorial that helps people become evaluators, and it's something that should be done every year, because we can always learn better. Better speaking series, leadership excellence. Use your area director. I showed you these Toastmasters recently. Your area director is the link between your club and the district, and the district has resources that when a club time's struggling, the district may be able to help. An example would be, if you are down in membership and the members are exhausted and they're having trouble getting new members or getting speeches ready. Sometimes your area director can connect you with other clubs that have the luxury of having a lot of speakers ready, and sometimes speakers will come and they like me to visit to a different club to do a speech. So sometimes things like that. But there are also publicity resources, etc. Your area director is a very important link, and you really want to get to know them, especially residents. Should be inviting you to an area council where you have a chance to talk with the other clubs. It's a very important link. Similarly, if you can, go outside your club. Connect with other clubs. Other clubs do a little bit differently. We'll work on the same program, but when I was an area director, that's where I once learned about a role called Quizmaster. And I kind of looked at this and I thought, hey, this is cool. I brought up my club. People love it. There's all little things you can learn and pick from other clubs, and besides, you get to meet other people.